Welcome to the next episode here in the Red Delta Project YouTube channel, podcast, and live feed, where we take a fundamental approach to health and fitness to give you more power, control, and freedom over your health and diet and exercise lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project and author of the books that sponsor these episodes, like Grind Style Calisthenics, Micro Workouts, Overcoming Isometrics, as well as the designers for shirts just like this. This is my brand new shirt here. Of course, if you're listening to the audio, you can't see this, but this is my brand new Paul Wade's Calisthenics, old school calisthenics training shirt. It's down below in the RDP merch store in the description if you want to check that out. So thank you very much for coming on. And today's topic, we are doing our pull-up episode. Last week's episode was the push-up episode, where I talked about all sorts of tips, tricks, and ways to use push-ups better, get more from them, and program them. Today, we're going to do the exact same thing with pull-ups. But with a lot of the tips and tricks, tactics, the things that apply for push-ups also apply very well for pull-ups as well. And the first tip is one that's going to overcome a lot of challenges that people face when it comes to pull-ups. Because like with push-ups, a lot of things are like, oh, I can't seem to build muscle with it. I can't seem to engage my muscles very well, particularly the lats or the upper traps. I can't seem to have stability. I can't seem to get my repetitions up. All of this stuff can be largely mitigated or just outright avoided with good scapular control. Now with push-ups, last week I talked about how we want to have plenty of retraction and protraction with our shoulders and keeping the shoulders roughly down. When we're doing vertical motions, particularly with pull-ups, we want to kind of lock our shoulders back and have maybe a little bit of vertical motion. And the biggest mistake, I don't know if you call it a mistake, maybe, it's more of a thing that people get held back by, is lack of scapular retraction with pull-ups. So they come to the pull-up bar and their shoulders are ever so slightly forwards. And as of that, their alignment is way off, their stability's off, they're compromising their strength, a lot more stress in the tendons there, in the elbows, tendonitis, on and on and on, problems after problems after problems. So that's why I always tell people, when you're doing pull-ups, lock those shoulders back, like a lot. How much? More than you think is necessary. Like if you're ever asking, are my shoulders back enough? The answer is no, because we want them back further, back as far as you can, and then as much more than that. And one of the tips that I talked about in one of the episodes of Red Delta Project YouTube videos is stand, if you can, or start directly underneath the pull-up bar. Especially when we have pull-up bars that are within reach or maybe even a little bit low, like a doorway pull-up bar. What ends up happening is people oftentimes, they'll have the bar in front of them. So they're looking up at the pull-up bar. They're not looking directly up, but they're looking up at roughly a 45-degree angle. And as a result, when they reach forward, their shoulders protract. They go forward. And then when they hang, their shoulders are all hunched up and tucked up, and therefore we lose that alignment. So you don't necessarily have to be under the bar, but it sure as hell helps. But that's where you want your mindset, is thinking back, like really far back. And that's going to help mitigate a lot of those issues and challenges that people come across with pull-ups, get you a lot more out of every single rep. So that's also where you get a lot of that tendonitis. A lot of times people are like, oh, my elbows are bothering me, sort of thing. This is one of the more common injuries in calisthenics training that people suffer from. And it's almost one of those deals where it's just a matter of time before it happens. Like it happens to everybody to some degree. So what can we do with this? Well, the first off is it usually is the result from having a bit too much volume, like more pull-ups, more pull-ups, more pull-ups. Remember, you do enough volume of anything, your technique's going to go to crap sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. I don't care if you're Captain America. If I said, just keep doing pull-ups, eventually it's going to turn to garbage. Your technique's going to falter. Your shoulders are going to be all over the place, and you're going to have that happen. So the first thing I recommend is get down on the volume a little bit, okay, and stop rep chasing. So that way we can focus on intensity and focus on good technique, not how many can you do, and more is always the answer. The second is keeping the shoulders packed. Of course, that's good there. It also may help to have a little bit more of an emphasis on external rotation on the arms. Just a little bit may help. However, if you are already struggling with those elbow issues, the damage is done. So even if you do things great and right and perfect technique and the stuff that your arms should be able to handle, once you have that damage, you need to back off considerably to let it heal, because healthy things done with damaged joint is still going to be injurious. It's kind of like if you sprain your ankle and then you go walk around for a while, it's still going to hurt your ankle. It doesn't mean walking is bad or you're walking bad. It's because you're injured. So you want to make sure that you're doing things that, one, don't cause pain. And yes, that may mean no more pull-ups for a while and maybe rows, light rows, fairly high repetitions, just get some blood flow into the muscle. So we want to give it time to rest. And yes, I know it sucks, but that type of injury takes forever to heal, depending on the severity, of course. But yeah, be patient with it. It's going to take a while. Don't try to just force it around. And of course, you try different grips and stuff like that. But for the most part, anything that's even like, it's kind of a little there, maybe a little bit of pain and stuff. Nope, you don't want that. You want to stay as far away from pain as possible. So that's the elbow thing. Lats are a big challenge a lot of people face too when it comes to pull-ups, where they're like, I just don't feel my lats working. Yeah, very common, because a lot of us don't have good tension control and activation in our lats. And as a result, if you don't have good tension control, you can do pull-ups till the cows come home. It's not really going to do a whole lot for you. If you don't feel it working, it's not working. Well, it's working to some degree, but not nearly to the degree it should. It's kind of like trying to get drunk off of watered down Pabst Blue Ribbon. It's pretty close to water. You eventually could get there, but it's a very long and inefficient process. So I recommend Overcoming Isometrics for this. This is how I really was able to help with that to a very large degree. The book Overcoming Isometrics has this exercise in it. It's a very helpful way to go about it. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to hinge forward, holding onto a yoga strap or something, and you're going to drive your arms down and in. Because your lats, oftentimes we think of the lats as something that drives us is on the sides of the body, but really the best way to engage your lats is to imagine like you're trying to touch your elbows behind you. I mean, you can't obviously, or touch your hands behind you. That's where your lat activation comes in, because all of that is down and back. So you want to engage your lats by feeling like you're trying to pull your elbows down and back as much as you possibly can in order to warm up the lats with that exercise. Then once you can get your lats more engaged with Overcoming Isometrics, then try to do your pull-ups and your rows and stuff, and that can be a good way to go about it. The next issue that often comes up is people have one of two challenges when it comes to programming for pull-ups. In the first case, which is more common, is when people have a trouble getting over those initial pull-up numbers. Like, I can do 2 pull-ups, I can do 5 pull-ups, I can do 3 pull-ups. I seem to be stuck at 5 pull-ups or 3 pull-ups and so on. Okay. The other is people like, I can do pull-ups till the cows come home. How do I get stronger with this? So in the first case, we want to make sure that, yes, doing standard style pull-ups kind of thing is good, but it's by no means what should be your bread and butter training program, because you just don't have the volume to get good at it. Plus, when you go heavy all the time, chances are your technique's not going to be the best. So what you want to do is go with a regress technique. So seated pull-ups, where your feet are on the ground or they're up on a plyo box or something, and you let your hips hang down underneath your hands, and you can do this off of an elevated box on a pull-up bar, or a more common approach is to use rings or suspension straps that hang low, roughly about neck height or something. And then you do pull-ups with your legs, not necessarily assisting, but you're just taking the weight off of them so that you're not lifting your legs up. And I know people are like, that's not a real pull-up. You grab, you pull up, it's a real pull-up. That's the only requirement for a pull-up to work, is you grab something overhead and you pull yourself up to any degree. If you've got that, it's a pull-up, okay? So you want to make that your bread and butter. You want to make that what you're normally doing for your pull-up workout. And when you're doing your strength stuff, where you're like, I'm going heavy today, then you do the regular style pull-ups, because there's regular pull-ups. Regular and normal is very much a artificial construct. When you're doing your jackknife pull-ups, as they call them in convict conditioning, where your feet are up on something and you're not lifting your full body weight, that's now your normal pull-up. That's what you're going to be using for the bulk of your training. Same thing applies for those who are like, oh, I'm getting bored with pull-ups. I can do like 20 of them at a stretch and so on. Now, okay, great. Now progress the technique. Progress to harder pull-ups. Remember, fundamentally, calisthenics is no different from weightlifting. If you can do something for endless reps, that's no different than always lifting the same weight for endless reps. And people are like, well, you're not going to get too much stronger, bigger and stronger from that. You got to add weight. Let's go. Let's add some resistance. So you want to have the same exact approach with calisthenics. And you can do that several ways. Of course, weighted pull-ups are a common way to go about it, but I recommend for most people, go with technique first, because the vast majority of people who are doing weighted pull-ups have horrible technique. And as a result, they'll get more from the technique, and it's going to be a lot safer for them. So the first thing I would do is focus on range of motion. So come all the way up, so your chest is coming to your hands and you're pulling your chest into the bar, not just getting the chin barely over the bar. No, all the way up. Shoulders are down and back, all the way down. Now, a lot of people, they get crazy about like, oh, dead hang. Should I be dead hanging? And some people are like, you have to dead hang and stuff. The dead hang pull-up is one of those examples where it makes it harder, but it doesn't necessarily make it any more effective. And the reason for that is because a dead hang means you're relaxing into the bottom and just hanging, which is fine. It's okay. A lot of people are like, oh, joints are bad and stuff. No, you're fine. You're fine. But remember, the whole point of training and exercise is to put tension in our muscle. So if you dead hang, you take the tension out of the muscle. So you're literally unplugging your muscles and then plugging them back in again, figuratively speaking. So it's like trying to browse the internet and you're constantly turning your phone on and off. Yeah, it's going to make it harder, but not any more productive. So come as low as you can, open up those shoulders, open up those lats, but still keep some tension in your shoulders, your biceps, your grip, your lats, your entire back and stuff. That way you're maximizing your benefits from maximizing your range with that. So once we got that, then you can progress to harder variations where your hands are coming closer, 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 closer. And again, if you're doing like narrow grip pull-ups, that's normal for you now. That's 80% of your pull-up routine is all this. And then you go with one arm is coming out to the side and you're primarily pulling on one side. I like style commando grip pull-ups, and then I'll just have less and less pressure on that hand. So this is the primary arm that's doing all of the work. And that's a really good one that you can progress to some heavy resistance too. So when I usually do this, I'm doing sets of like 2 to 3 repetitions max. So it's very, very, very heavy. And I like that. Very satisfying to go very heavy with pull-ups for that. And it never fails too. Like sometimes I'll get those into my regular routine, those commando style pull-ups. And every time I do, I get more of the comments on my YouTube videos, people saying I'm looking bigger, I'm looking better, my arms are looking bigger and everything. That's why I'm making that more of a regular part of the routine rather than kind of going off and doing weighted pull-ups and all these other sorts of exercises. So those are the big tips. Let's see. Oh, one more thing too. A lot of times people debate, like, should you arch your back, pull up? Should you keep it straight and like hinge at your hips and stuff? In the big picture, it really doesn't matter. Because again, fundamentally, you grab, you pull up. That's it. And, you know, as long as you're fundamentally still doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result. It's not really going to be that different. If there is a difference, like you arch your back, you're like, wow, I feel that so much better in one muscle or another. Ask yourself, well, why are you using your muscle more there than in the other version? Because you should be using it in that other one. Don't let your muscle tension and activation be passive. Engage the muscles. Remember, our muscles work because our brain tells it to, not the exercise. Never put the exercise in charge of your muscle tension. The exercise is just the general template for it. But you want to be in charge of the tension. You want to be telling the muscles to work hard. You want to engage the muscles proactively. That's going to keep it much more satisfying, much safer, and a hell of a lot more effective. Plus, it's going to be consistently a lot better as far as it feeling. So it's like sometimes I do it and I feel it in this muscle. Sometimes I feel it and I don't really feel it. That's on you. That's not what grip am I using and should I go wider or narrower or any of that nonsense. Ideally, your pull-ups should feel the same regardless of the variation. Any width, any grip, any type of grabbing on rings versus a bar and everything should feel relatively the same. That's your objective with those sorts of things. So they're my biggest pull-up tips. Hopefully that gives you something to kind of chew on a little bit, but let's get to some of these questions here to see if I can't answer some things that I may have missed and help you on out as well. So thank you very much for coming on, folks. Sniff Rat is here from England. Good to see you, my friend. First question here, any tips or precautions when doing calisthenics with an extra mobile shoulder, one with hypermobility? Lucky, I was always stiff as a board. I wish I had that sort of good problem to have in many ways, I guess. Can voluntarily dislocate right shoulder on command. There's a party trick for you. Left shoulder is harder to do just that. So yeah, this is where, again, tension comes into key. Tension's going to give you more of that joint stability. Now, if you're nervous about things like at the very bottom of your range of motion or something like that, there's nothing wrong with staying out of that range. If you notice you're more prone to issues and stuff through a shorter range, then don't go there. You know, a lot of times, again, people will say, oh, it's not a real pull-up unless it's this amount of range of motion and stuff like that. Complete nonsense. I don't care if you're going like 3 inches. It's still a pull-up. It's just a different range of the pull-up. Things are just tweaked around, but it's not like you need a certain range for it to suddenly count, unless it's like in a competition or something, you have to get so low in order for it to count as a rep. But as long as you got the general pulling motion, it's still going to work. So I would shorten the range and then work on increasing range with utmost control, full 100% control. Don't let yourself come down and then just hang where you lose the tension. You want to make sure you are completely engaged as much as possible. And if you're asking, am I engaged enough? The answer is no. Always more than that. Let's see, Stephen Yeager. Hey, Matt, what would you recommend if someone can't get off the dead hang? And what if one arm is significantly stronger? Yeah, so that's a good reason to not dead hang in the first place. I think I might have addressed this, and I'm just getting to the question now. So yeah, the dead hang is hard because it's hard to get out of the hole. So I say, don't even go there. Get to a point where you can hang with tension and control. This is a good reason to practice hanging knee raises as well. Hanging knee raises and leg raises, very beneficial for that because that gives you more of that practice of hanging while controlling your shoulders because your legs are moving around. You got to keep your back tight, your shoulders and your arms engaged and stuff to prevent yourself from swinging around. So the hanging knee raise, that's another exercise that I've been getting more into a lot lately and realizing there's so many benefits to it. And that's just another one, is it gets you really good at hanging while maintaining that control. Michael Stokes from the UK. How's it going, Michael? Oh, excuse me. Steven came back on up there. Pardon me. Let's see. I'll get to questions that, here's a good one that I didn't address. James Ahmed asking about plateaus. So pull-up plateaus, push-up plateaus, all plateaus with calisthenics and stuff. Here, remember what I've always said. I made a mini short video on this one recently on the YouTube channel, getting more into these YouTube shorts. So that's a good reason to subscribe. Hint that I come out with these real short 1-minute videos for fitness tips these days. And here's the bottom line. You can't do more reps because the reps you can currently do aren't good enough. And you'll be able to do more reps once you get good at them. So it's a little bit of a cart before the horse kind of scenario. People are like, I want to get stronger in pull-ups, and in order to do that, I need to do more reps. Like, no, you're not going to get better at pull-ups because you can do more reps. You do more reps because you get better at pull-ups. You do that first. The increase in repetitions is a reflection of progress. It doesn't necessarily drive it. So the things that I was saying before, range of motion, packing the shoulders, whatever, here's the general rule I always tell people is, what's the difference between the first rep and your last rep or your last couple of reps? What's changing? Something's changing about your technique. The speed's changing, your body position's changing, your range of motion is changing. Something's changing. If you don't know what it is, set up a video camera. Or not a video camera, everybody's got a phone now. I suddenly had this image of somebody with like one of these big, huge camcorders that sits on your shoulders from like Back to the Future or something. But videotape yourself doing the reps and notice what you did differently throughout the set. Whatever's changing, that's what you work on. That's what you fight against. That's what you try to minimize. Because once you minimize those, suddenly you're going to notice you can get more repetitions. Let's see. Oh, here we are. Chin-ups build brachioradialis and brachialis muscle. All of them do. All of them do. So for those who aren't familiar with my thing, I go with Paul Wade's kind of approach to this. In convict conditioning, he mentioned now, he's like, I just refer to it universally as pull-ups. You grab, you pull. Everything's a pull-up. I've never used the word chin-up anymore because to me, it's very redundant. It's largely pointless to use that term. A lot of people are like, this is a chin-up. And I was like, wait, I thought this was a chin-up. No, this is a chin-up. No, wait, what's your grip? And what do you do? What do you call it when you've got alternated grip or neutral grip? Blah. It's a pull-up. They're all pull-ups, full stop. I think we should take the whole chin-up thing and just throw it in the trash because it just confuses things. You're pulling up. And again, whatever you're doing should work all of those muscles. So if you had a different grip and you felt it differently, like in the brachioradialis, why are you using your brachioradialis differently with that grip? That's a question to ask. Why aren't you using it with the other grips? Because you should be using it. You should be engaging it to at least some degree, no matter what the grip is. So that's why it's very helpful to learn from using different techniques. You change your technique, you feel it differently. What are you doing differently? Remember, the exercise isn't making that happen. You have a different hand position, you feel it differently. It's not because of your hand position. Something is being reactive to it, and you don't want your tension to be reactive. You want it to be proactive. So you're like, okay, I'm using it more here. So then if you change your grip, you're like, okay, try to make it work better and more in that grip. And you'll probably find your technique improves, your reps go up, and so on. Because no, you're not using the brachioradialis more with an overhand grip. You're using it less with an underhanded grip or vice versa or whatever. So no, you're not emphasizing it, you're de-emphasizing it. You don't want to do that. You want to emphasize and have that muscle working hard all the time, not just part of the time. Let's see. For more back activation, yeah, shoulders back will just basically take care of that sort of thing. That's one of the things about the shoulders back is it should work your whole back. Your entire back should be lit up like a Christmas tree anytime you're pulling in any way, shape, or form. Milana, how's it going? Hey, Matt, do you know if some people can have that kind of bone structure that prevent them from going to a deep squat? I was working on deep squat a few years, still don't have it. Can high foot arch be responsible and the problem? I wouldn't say no, because I'm sure there's something going on there, but by and large, I think it's not the way we want to address these sorts of things. Stronger by Science just had an article come out about a month ago where they said that basically poor ankle flexion is more of a responsible factor for lack of being able to get into a deep squat than femur length. Because a lot of tall people will say that, like, I got long femurs, can't deep squat, long femurs, can't deep squat, yada, yada, yada. It's probably much more a mobility thing. So here's the thing, though, is with a deep squat, you need good mobility in the ankle, the knee, which is usually not much of an issue, and the hips. And the hips are really tough because there's a lot of muscles that need to be flexible for that one. So usually, almost everybody's tight in either the ankle or the hip or both. Very rarely will you find someone who has good mobility in both of those areas. And it's very common. You'll find people who can finally get into a deep squat because they figured out it's their ankle or their hip or whatever. And they're like, it's all about the ankle. And you got guys like me who's like, it's all about the hips and stuff. No, it's always both. Because when you get into a good deep squat, you want maximum range in that hip. You want to feel like your hips are getting stretched. Same thing with your ankle. You should feel a stretch in your calf as you get into the bottom. And lastly, people say, well, how do I work on that? You work on it by getting into a deep squat. Like not just endless squats, like get into a deep squat and sit down there for a good 5 minutes. Hold on to something if you like. Suspension straps are really good for this, and just flex those knees forward as much as you can. Feel like you're trying to pull your glutes and your hamstrings apart as far as you possibly can. Like you're trying to pivot your ass cheeks away from your hamstrings, from the back of your legs as much as you can. Do this as much as you like throughout the day, every day, preferably for sure. And that'll open things up and teach you how to use that kind of mobility in order to get into a deep squat. But bone structure, probably not really as much of an influence as we think it is. Let's see. Michael and the Drop Weight Daddies, how's it going? What can I expect Your next book, brother. That's been quite difficult. I've had to start rewriting it several times now, largely because this is what happens whenever I write a book. The exercise books that I've written and stuff practically write themselves. When I started grind style calisthenics, that only took 2 months. I didn't have a life during that time because I spent the whole time writing, but it's very straightforward. Like, oh, here's a way of exercising, and just explain it through the book. But this book, like Fitness Independence, this is one of those books, like I always write my books, I start them with the intent that if I can't realistically change someone's life with this, it's a complete waste of time. The number one goal of every book I write is this has to change people's lives. And I'm doing it in such a way that I'm writing about stuff that's never been addressed before in fitness. This is explaining basically how fundamental approach to fitness works. Never been done. So I'm really cutting paths through uncharted territory right now. So it's very difficult for me to explain some of these ideas and get them across in a very clear way. So it's really hard. So probably the end of the year is what I'm looking at, but hopefully not too much longer than that. Oh, T-Bowl asking, can you give an example of full body drop set workout? Well, it depends on what the exercises are, but basically when it comes to calisthenics, just start with a harder version, move to like a less hard version, less hard version, less hard version, less hard version, and so on. And that depends on what's hard for you. It depends on where you're starting. So let's say, for example, we've got someone who's really strong in pull-ups and stuff. So we got weighted pull-ups. We're doing them with a 25-pound plate, okay? So you got weighted pull-ups, do what you can. Then you drop the weight and you go regular pull-ups. Then you go jackknife pull-ups. Then you go rows. Then you go bent knee rows. And at that point, you're pretty much smoked, right? Or you could do progressive calisthenics ones are tough because if you do like commando pull-ups where one side is working harder, then you switch. Well, one side is resting when the other one is, so it doesn't quite work out quite as well. So you want to be doing bilateral stuff. But yeah, really hard to medium hard to lighter hard to pretty easy, and you're done. Another one from Steven. Hey, Matt, thanks for the answer. You're welcome, my friend. Thank you for coming on. Do you recommend retraction in the dead hang as well? Second, can you learn the first pull-up only with progressive rows? Yeah, I mean, retraction. Yeah, you said retraction. For a minute there, I thought you said protraction. Yeah, retraction. Get those shoulders back. Keep them back all the time for the pull-up for the most part. Trying to think of examples of exceptions to that, but it's not coming up to me. So yeah, retraction, more. And first pull up with progressive rows, probably, I mean, you can get some pretty hardcore rows. If you're doing rows and then you've got like your table row and then your straight leg row up in a box, then you have single leg row with one knee tucked, and then you're doing bodyweight rows where you're in a tucked position. I mean, that's basically, I mean, rows are pull-ups. So it's just a different range of motion. That's the only real difference. So yeah, you can certainly get there. And then of course you got single arm rows. You know, if you can do 10 single arm rows with your legs straight out and your body is full, like down to the ground, you definitely can do pull-ups at that point for sure. Cause that's a seriously difficult, badass exercise. Oh, Master Stratocaster's in the house. Hey, how's it going, man? Hey, Matt, what do you think about hanging rest pull-ups as a method for increasing reps? One arm hanging rest without chalk, of course, focusing on good form. I would say just drop down. I mean, again, if you're hanging in a fatigued state, getting out of that hole is going to be a challenge. And there's, you know, jerking and flirking, you know, it's like just drop down and give yourself a rest. Shake out the arms, you know, more of a pause rep kind of thing. Maybe different if you're in like a competition, like in the PCC where we have our century, you have to do 10 pull-ups at the end. It's what is it? It's 40 squats, 30 push-ups, 10 hanging knee raises, 10 pull-ups. And once you start each one, you can't stop it or else you fail. So when you're on that bar, you can't drop off. So yeah, you can hang and rest, I guess. And if that gets you to the 10 pull-ups at the end to complete it, then great. But outside of things where you're saying, no, you can't drop off the bar, yeah, drop off the bar and give yourself a rest that way. It's going to be a much better way to recover for sure. What's the best exercise for narrow shoulders in calisthenics? I do lateral raises, rear delts, but they just don't even grow. They're my worst body part. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of shoulder raises in general. Honestly, I don't think they're very effective. I don't think they do very much. I mean, I was working with a guy the other day, working at his programming. We spent like over an hour looking at his program. It's weight machines, dumbbells, barbells, typical bodybuilder kind of stuff. And he's got like lateral raises in there. And I didn't tell him don't do it, but I told him don't bother tracking it. Like, don't even bother putting it in your log. Like, just do it for a bit, use it as a warm up and stuff. But honestly, it's not going to progress anywhere. You know, if you've got like 15-pound dumbbells and you're doing 10 to 12 reps, 5 years from now, you're 12-pound dumbbells, 10 to 12 reps. I mean, there's no real progression there. And if there's no real progression with what you're doing, it's not going to change. I don't care how hard you're working. You don't get results from hard work. You get results from progression. And this is just, it's too weak of an exercise. There's just not enough muscle involved. It's very weak from a leverage standpoint. It's just, you're never going to get very far with that. I use it as a warm up, or if we're going to do like a pre-fatigue or something. But for the most part, I don't really put much faith in these. If you never did them, you'd never miss them. You're not going to get any results with. If you didn't have them, your results wouldn't be any real different. So you want heavy, my friend, heavy, big movements. So pike push-ups is where I would get you started, right? Pike push-ups, bear crawls, bear walks, where you're in basically a pike push-up position, walking up the wall, walking across the wall. You want as much weight on your arms in that direction as possible. And that's going to be a much better shoulder builder for you. And second is make sure those shoulders are engaged with every upper body exercise you're doing. So what's the best shoulder exercises? Everything with your upper body. Your pull-ups should be a shoulder exercise. Your push-ups should be a shoulder exercise. Dips, everything that you're doing with your upper body, get those shoulders on. So that way they're working all the time, not in shoulder-specific workouts. The biggest shoulders I've ever seen on guys are guys who never did any direct shoulder work whatsoever. It was all push-ups, pull-ups, and dips. So engage them more all the time rather than, this kind of thing. Hope that helps. Frotan Inferno, back again. Always so good to see you. Hey, Matt, I've been watching some earlier videos, and the emphasis you put on foundations and the hostility towards dogmatic styles is in every single one. Yeah, that's the biggest adversary we have. It's the biggest thing that's going to hold you back in fitness is dogmatic adherence. You should get a shirt with that on. Oh, I do, my friend. I'm not wearing it now, but it's the one that says principles over dogma. That's the anti-dogmatic shirt that I have. And that just goes for things in life, because there's always nuance in how we approach things. There's always changes and subtleties and stuff. And anything dogmatic is not the habit itself. Okay, so in my book, I talk about how you could have a habit of going to church on Sundays. Is that dogmatic? No. But when you say, I have to go to church on Sundays, no matter what, that's dogmatic. So it's easy to be dogmatic about anything. But when we are dogmatic about something, we're saying, I have to do it regardless of my circumstances. So when that happens, you cease to become disciplined, and now you're obedient. And there's a big difference between the two. A disciplined person will do what is right regardless of what they're told. An obedient person will do what they're told regardless of what's actually right. So there's a subtle difference there, but the disciplined person will actually do what's best to do versus the dogmatic person will do things a certain way, even though it's probably in their best interest to do it a different way. And that's why dogmas are the single biggest threat to your objectives, to your quality of life, to your health, to you getting the results you want, and to the stress on mind, body, and so on. A fundamental approach gives you the freedom and flexibility to break away from the dogmas, so that way you can actually do what you need to do to get in the best shape of your life. And that's why I try not to be too negative about such things, but when people start getting very dogmatic, like you need to do it this way and you need to do it that way, it's just my personality. I think even when I was a kid, I didn't like doing it that like learning how to spell words as a kid, like you have to spell it this way. I don't want to spell it that way, or we've always done it that way. I'm like, then freaking change it. Like that's the worst excuse in the world. Anyway, getting a little steamed up here. Here we go. Wild Child Industries. Hey, Matt, what's your opinion on straight bar dips? Oh, yeah. I noticed that the shoulders naturally rotate forward as you come down, so it could possibly result in a more complete chest contraction. Actually, believe it or not, it's less of a chest contraction. When the shoulders rotate up and like that, chest actually turns off to a fair degree. So that's why it's not so much forward, but elevated. You know, you can have your chest on if your shoulders are forward, but when they're elevated, that's when they turn off. But no, the straight bar dip is an amazing chest exercise, as long as you keep those damn shoulders down. The funny story to that I always like to tell is years and years ago, when I very first started getting an exercise, I was doing push-ups and stuff, I took a trip to France. And when I was there, a friend of mine showed me this great sport called bouldering, where you climb up on boulders and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And the first time I got up on a boulder, and these things are like the size of school buses and stuff, they're like 10, 15 feet off the ground. And I got up and I kind of rolled onto the top of the rock, and I was like, yay, I did it. I got up on the boulder. And it's like, no, it doesn't count. See, what you got to do is you got to get your hands up and you push down, and then you put your feet up, because technically, I guess in that sport, only your feet and your hands could touch the top. So like, all right, fine. So throughout the rest of the day, I was doing that. I was basically pushing myself up at kind of like as if it's a straight bar dip. And the next day, my chest was so sore, I literally thought I needed to go to a doctor, because I couldn't lift my arms to like open doors. I was like in so much pain because of that motion, that pressing down motion. And that's why I always say dips are fantastic for blasting the hell out of your chest. All right. Speaking of chest, great Salter. Hey, Matt, can I get the inner upper chest to grow? My chest is developing, except the inner upper quarter. Thanks. Yeah. And there's a reason for that. It's just not big enough yet. So the chest, I mean, it's just a big muscle, right? And whenever we're like, oh, this area is not growing, that area is not, because the whole muscle is not big enough yet. You want this area or that area, this area to be bigger, make the whole thing bigger. You know, the idea of we can segment it and stuff, very much a bodybuilding thing, maybe much more on bro science. Maybe there is a little bit of emphasis in one area we can put, but for the average guy, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Make the whole thing bigger. Make the whole chest bigger. Make it working harder and really blast the hell out of it. It's that simple. You want a certain area of a muscle to get bigger, you make the whole muscle bigger. And focus on that progression, my friend. Working hard. Curtains, KRNS, Matt. I'm 6'6", 82 kilograms, 185 pounds, I think. I don't know. Metric conversions are confusing to me too. I'm an American. We don't live in the real world. And I can't do a single pull-up because it feels like my forearms are exploding. Hell yeah. I always do rows for this reason, but pull-ups seem impossible. Yeah, man, it's just you work on your grip. So funny story again. Years ago, there was this real bro science like kind of guy at the gym, and he always had lifting straps on. And his reasoning, faulty enough, was that the forearm muscle is small and your back muscle, like your lats, is big. Therefore, when doing any kind of pulling exercise, your forearms are going to be the weak link. They're going to give out long before you can adequately work your lats enough, which is complete BS, because I can do pull-ups for like maybe, 15, 20 seconds or so, depending on speed and tempo, but I can hang for easily 3 times that amount of time. Okay. Your forearms, as far as time under tension, can be a hell of a lot stronger than almost any other muscle in your back. And so you want to have that conditioned. So one is it's probably just going to get bigger and stronger on its own as long as you stay on it. You were saying you do rows. No, keep doing pull-ups. Keep on it. My forearms are blowing up. Great. Good. Forearm workout. Keep on it. You keep pulling up, but it feels like the forearms are working. Yes, they need to work. They're your weak link. Remember chain training theory, you're going to feel it in your weakest links. And then they're going to get stronger, and then it's going to be the next weakest link and the next one. And before too long, the whole thing is strong as hell, and there's no more weak links. So just stay on those pull-ups. Still do the rows by all means, but start with the pull-ups and just, let your grip fail. Let your forearms blow up. That means you're on the right track with it. And it won't be like that forever, for sure. It probably won't be for very long. Omar asking, how do I master the pistol squat? Practice, my friend. Lots of practice. And practicing other squat motions too. Pistol squatters are also shrimp squatters and regular squatters and lungers and everything. Remember, it's not the exercise you get good at, it's the movement pattern. So if you're really good at squats, you'll be good at almost any type of squat. I knew a powerlifting friend of mine, and he was really strong powerlifter, was state champion and everything like that. He's like, "What's a shrimp squat?" And I showed him, and he's like, "Oh, this," and he just did it. A little shaky and stuff, but he just did it because he's really good at squatting. So that's the thing, is we don't want to necessarily, we don't need to be good at pistol squats. You just need to be good at squatting movement pattern. And once you're good at that with different types of squats and various, your hip mobility, ankle mobility that I was talking about earlier, then that pistol squat's going to be right as rain as well. And continuing our conversation with Wild Child, I'm aware of the shoulder stability aspect. Notice how I said naturally, since internal rotation is one of the functions of the pecs. Of course, you got to keep them down. Oh, yeah, absolutely, for sure. Sorry, that was back and forth. Proton, continuing our conversation. Matt, I know what you mean. In Britain, they say that you have to spell realize with an S instead of a Z. That's interesting, since it was considered American, but English isn't Latin. Yeah, the only rule is to try to be clear. Yeah. And the English language, like when I was growing up and learning Japanese, Japanese people, when I went over there, would be like, God, English is like the most confusing, stupidest language in the world. I'm like, amen to that. You're not going to hear any arguments from me. HOME is home. COME is come, not comb. No, that's COMB. Okay, COMB is comb. So BOMB is boom. No, that's bomb. It's like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. It just drives me crazy. God, I used to have the worst temper tantrums as a kid over that sort of thing, because it's like, this is stupid. We shouldn't have it like this. We should just change it. Philip, coming on in, just want to say hi and thanks for the great content. Thank you very much for watching my content. Helped me a lot in my training. Thank you kindly. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I always appreciate it when you folks reach out and let me know if I'm helping you or not, or if you have questions, because ultimately I am doing this for you. I get benefit from knowing I'm helping you. If I don't feel like I'm helping anybody, that's decreasing my motivation for what I'm doing. This is all for you folks. And that, therefore, comes back to me. Tebow coming on again. Hey, brother, any good resources to help with programming? So general programming and stuff, trying to think, anything with strength training. Like, again, fundamentally, calisthenics is just regular strength training. It's just we have a different vehicle that we're using, but programming is exactly the same. There is no difference. We're just going about changing the resistance in different ways. So if you go on Amazon and you just look up books on strength training, periodization, training for speed or strength or power, that'll still fit the bill. You can, convict conditioning is a good one, because that's got just some basic programming things in there, just general guidelines. The thing with programming is it's far from an exact science. People get very dogmatic about their programming methods. And especially over the past couple of years, I've gotten much more about guidelines. I've got another video coming out fairly soon about guidelines for training for strength versus hypertrophy. I talk a lot about that in, actually, what am I talking about? Grind Style Calisthenics, dude. My Grind Style Calisthenics book, as well as the free program that I come out with the first of every month, that is a program that is pre-programmed for you, so that it has all of the objectives that you can have, and then you can change things around. So yeah, read Grind Style Calisthenics. That should make things a lot easier to understand, because as long as you go in a certain direction with your programming, you'll get the result. It's not as particular. People are like, okay, 7-minute abs, right? That whole thing is like, no, not 6-minute abs. You can't even get your heart rate up in time. It's got to be 7 minutes. People get very, very particular about, like, okay, if you're training for strength, 1 to 3 reps. What about 4? No, you can't do it in 4 reps. No, as long as you have the same general objective going forward, it's going to do roughly the same sort of thing. So the biggest thing I would give you is don't be too dogmatic about being super fine detailed. It's very much about generalities. Oliver DT, hey Matt, you have mentioned that you got knee problems from pistol squats here ago. I didn't get them from pistol squats. I got them from basically beating the snot out of my knees when I was 13. Can you elaborate on what happened? So yeah, it wasn't pistol squats. pistol squats were exposing the problem. They weren't causing it. And this is usually what happens in the world of exercise, is that the exercise doesn't actually cause the problem. I used to make one of the biggest mistakes out there, which is I would do an exercise, I would get hurt, and then think the exercise was the problem. But the exercise was exposing the problem. And when you throw away the exercise, what ends up happening is you're throwing away the baby in the bathwater, because the real problems, in my case, it was external rotation in the right hip due to a birth defect from when I was a kid, lack of hamstring strength and hip mobility. And those were the three big things that held me back. Like, okay, so I never did pistol squats again, right? Yeah, pistol squats, bad for the knees kind of thing. It doesn't matter. Whatever leg exercise I would have taken instead, leg press, lunges, back squats, whatever, those same issues would have carried over to those exercises. And they might have been okay in the time being, but then they would have gotten worse. And then that exercise would have been bad. And now the problem's even worse. And either I'm okay, now I'm really messed up, or I say, okay, now I can't do that exercise, and my sphere of functional ability gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's how people are like, I can't even walk anymore. So it wasn't pistol squats. Pistol squats are perfectly fine and safe as long as you know how to do them correctly with proper alignment and tension control and engagement. But when we do exercises and we're like, oh, this hurts my arm or something, what are you doing wrong in that exercise? How are you messing that up? That's a learning opportunity, because then when you figure out what that is, not only does it fix that exercise and make it way more effective, but then you can apply it to all the other exercises and make those way more effective. So it's one of those real fork in the road where you can either go down a real dark, bad path that could get worse, or you can go on the path that's going to be making things a hell of a lot better, plus much more resilient and less prone to injury as well. So take those injuries as lessons, my friend. God, I wish I knew that back then. I would have avoided a lot of pain. Kalash, how's it going, my friend? Hey, Matt, what do you incorporate any plyometrics in your training? Do you find it pointless? No, not pointless at all. I don't actually, largely because I'm just lazy about it, but also because I get a lot of jumping and stuff in other activities I do. And my Taekwondo has a lot of jumping and fast kicking. I ski a lot of bumps in the winter. So I'm basically like all winter long, I'm jumping down mountains. That's what I do whenever I go skiing. I'm just jumping down mountains. So with all of that, I get a lot of plyometric kind of stuff, although I probably could work with a little bit more explosiveness as well. But no, at the time right now, I don't do any plyometric stuff. Emilian Buza, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Cool avatar here. Hey, Matt, what do you think about Hindu squats, aka Bathak, versus regular bodyweight squats? Hindu squats as effective for hypertrophy. I don't really know much about them, to be perfectly honest. I know Matt Fury, that was one of his big exercises for many years. I'm a big fan of sissy squats, though. I love sissy squats. One of my all-time favorite exercises. And Hindu squats, as far as I kind of understand them, are kind of like a sissy squattish kind of motion. So in that regard, I think it's great. Ultimately, I don't really think there's a bad squat out there. But in the end of the day, it comes down to do it, see what you think. If it feels good for you, and you feel the muscle working really good and stuff, rock on, go for it. And I mean, hell, those exercises have been around for, I don't know how long, like thousands of years or something. They can't be a bad exercise if they've been around for that long, for sure. Paul Bruce, hey man, good to see you, Paul. Hey Matt, your video on yielding versus overcoming isometrics with hybrid winning out made me think, would you use hybrid iso rows pull-ups to build muscular endurance as opposed to simply yielding? Oh, absolutely. So I'm working on a video right now that uses the bodyweight master over there with the iso loop for hybrid pull-up, which is, as far as back and biceps, one of the best exercises you can possibly do. So yeah, hybrid all day long, my friend. I love hybrid isometrics. A little bit tricky equipment-wise sometimes. They can be a little bit harder to finagle from time to time, but they're just, oh my gosh, they're just so effective for getting those muscles to light up like a Christmas tree. Fro10 again, hey Matt, I can do pistol squats well on my right leg, but as soon as I train my left leg, I basically collapse. Yep. This stops me from doing normal squats as well. What exercise might fix it? So it's a probably lack of either mobility, ankle or hip. Again, the deep squat stuff can help. Or I would probably more likely say lack of activation in the posterior muscles, your glutes and your hamstrings particularly. Because when you sit down into a squat, your muscles essentially hold you up. And so if you think of like sitting back into a chair, the chair is there to hold up your ass. But when you squat down, there's no chair there. So you've got to have the tension in those muscles hold up your ass. So I would bet money that there's not enough action in your hamstrings, glutes, maybe calf. So try some hamstring and glute action, like reverse planks, hamstring curls on a TRX, just getting everything lit up, and try to keep those muscles engaged as much as possible. When we squat, we almost want to feel like we're pulling our hips down to our ankle, like we're sitting down and back and pulling our ass to the back of our heel. And if you do that, that may help with that. Now, that would be the way I would go with. Another plateau, pull-ups, a little late to the party, but again, yeah, get better at the pull-ups you can already do. And if you're not doing many pull-ups, regress to the seated pull-ups and stuff. But yeah, look at what's changing about your technique throughout the set, and then try to prevent that from happening. Hey, Matt, do you think isometrics can benefit you if you're doing grappling or BJJ? Oh, of course, man. Any kind of wrestling. I mean, it's practically isometric city when you do that sort of thing, because you're pushing against another human being. So when you're doing isometrics, that prepares your nervous system extremely well for that type of training. That's why I included a lot of isometrics in my book, Bodyweight Training for Martial Arts, because it has fantastic carryover for that. Rick Hendricks. Cool avatar there. Excuse me. Hey, Matt, I'm 6'5", very good. And I want to try bulking for more than half a year. Do you think it's a good thing to do? I'm not happy with my lack of muscle right now. Yeah, man. I mean, muscle, here's the thing about muscle is it's largely a mystery on how we build it. Anybody who's like, you do X, you build muscle. We don't know enough about why we build it to really say that reliably. Every time in the lab, they try to isolate why we think we build muscle, it doesn't pan out. It's really weird. It's like, is it hormones? No. Is it progression? No. Is it this exit? No. It's like, damn it, what the hell do we do to build muscle? So a lot of people turn to food, right? And they're like, am I eating enough? I don't know, So I always tell people, yeah, by all means, eat more. I'm always about eat as much as you like. Food is a very good thing, but don't get stuck on that train. I mean, a lot of people get stuck on that. Like, I just need to eat more if I want to build muscle. I'm like, yeah, you're 35% body fat. I think you're eating enough. Like, you've checked that food box off. It may be other things that you're missing there. So by all means, eat, my friend. If you're starting to get much more body fat, that means you're already eating more than enough. Remember, a real calorie surplus does not build muscle. It builds fat, because that's what a surplus is. If you're building muscle, that's not a surplus because you're using it. So definitely eat more. And you probably don't need a lot more either. Like, add a couple eggs to your breakfast in the morning. There you go. My big thing is, if I'm like, I wonder if I'm eating enough, I'll have a couple of cups of yogurt every night before bed. There we go. It doesn't need to be like doubling your calorie intake and stuff. So I always say, go for it. Yeah, definitely eat plenty. But if you're putting on fat, you're eating too much. That's how calories and human nutrition works. And also look at other things. Sleep. Make sure you're adequately working the muscle really, 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 really hard. And also focusing on progression. Remember, you're not going to build muscle if you work it hard. You build it because you work it progressively. So focus on those. Keep a logbook too if you need to, right there. Hello, Matt. Every 2 days I go to do some calisthenics. I do it until failure, pull-ups, chin-ups, yada, yada. However, every time I feel sore, so we should keep training even if we're still sore with pull-ups. Nah, give yourself some rest. Now, you can, soreness is not as important as we think it is. It doesn't mean what you think it means, kind of thing. It just means that you exposed your body to something that hasn't been exposed to in a while. So if you're sore, you can break up the inflammation with some activity and stuff like that. Not like you're doing too much damage, but you're probably not stimulating much growth either. The way to think about it is, if we have muscle damage and the muscles are sore, our resources are going to be spent prioritizing recovering from the damage versus actually getting bigger. Okay, so the analogy I always think of is like building muscle is like tuning a race car or a sports car to be even faster. So you make an appointment to the shop and you're like, I want to bring my Corvette in and tune it up and make it even bigger and faster. And they're like, great, bring it in. And on the way there, you get in an accident and you smash it all up and it limps to the shop and you're like, I damaged my car, man. And like, okay, well, we were going to spend the next month and $20,000 making your car faster and better, but now we got to fix it with that time and money. And until we fix it, then we can make it bigger and stronger. So that's kind of the similar thing with muscle. Is a lot of times we're like, I got to get sore, or I'm sore. That means, no, you're not going to probably build much muscle until you can do it without being sore. Because then you don't have to spend those resources to repairing the muscle. You can actually make it bigger. So I would say make your workouts in such a way so that you don't get sore. So maybe a little bit more frequent with them, or cut back on the volume just a little bit and see if that's going to help a little bit more. And that way you don't have to deal with the soreness. But it is very satisfying, isn't it? I'm the same way. It's like, oh yeah, legs are sore today. I like this. And then I think, yeah, it probably means I set myself back a little bit. Let's see. Joshua, a couple more here real quick. Ever had bicep tears or bicep tendon tears from explosive overhand pull-ups? Any tips for it? Yeah, like I said, you do anything enough, it's going to turn to crap and it's going to hurt you. I can't even do them overhand anymore. I can only do handstands, underhands for bicep and lat gains. Thank you. Yeah, so underhand's perfectly fine. Pulling is pulling. It's all roughly the same thing. But like I said, like if you get hurt with that, expect a long recovery. Hell, I've heard of some doctors telling me, depending on the extent of the damage, you could be looking at a 18-month recovery process. It's not something you're going to walk away from in a couple of weeks. It's going to be, okay, it's October, October 9th? Yeah, maybe by Christmas you'll be back on your feet, if you're lucky, kind of thing. And every time you hurt it, every time you get on, you're like, you just set yourself back in a week or two. Because every time you feel pain, you're re-damaging it. So do whatever you without the pain, but at the same time, get those shoulders back and, maybe no more explosiveness for a while, nice and smooth and slow, a little shorter range of motion, because you're ripping on that tendon every single time. And even if you don't feel it, doesn't mean it's still there. It can be still happening for sure. And again, folks, if I didn't get to your question, put it again, because my screen only shows about 5 of these, and they go through pretty quick. And Matt, if you wrote grind style today, would you make any changes? Oh, I have made changes. So if you go get grind style calisthenics now, I mean, I don't write, this is the 4th edition or anything like that, but I've had many changes I've made to it. A lot of it just editorial stuff. The reason why I haven't actually put out another book this year is because I went through my entire library and updated it this year. Instead of writing another book, I made all of my other books better. So refining the pictures, editing, all that sort of thing. That was my big project for 2021. So GSC, as you see it now, is different from the original one that you had. And I've changed a little bit of the programming around, changed a little bit of the things around. So yeah, and that's one of the great things about being an independent publisher, is I can just go in and upload a different PDF and it's changed. So it's always evolving. GSC is always changing and evolving, getting better and better. I'm not a big fan, again, of being dogmatic and getting a stick in the mud and saying, this is how GSC works. This is how we've always done it. This is how we're always going to do it. Nope. If I learn some information and I'm like, oh yeah, it's better to do it this way. Okay, we change it. No sacred cows in my world. If I find a better way to do something, I change it. There's no reason for me to be nostalgic about the past and stuff. So yeah, I've had lots of times when I'm like, oh, it's better to do it this way. All right, we'll change it because that's a better way. And therefore I do it that way. Excuse me. Why do my wrists hurt after a few sets of pull-ups? So it's probably due to, you may be on a bar, I'm guessing, like my bodyweight master, you're on a straight bar. So when we do pull-ups and stuff, we have some natural pronation and supination going on in our arm. It's just how our body's built. We have a little internal and external rotation. So you may have a little bit more rotation going on. And if you're on a fixed position, then you're getting your wrist torqued and tweaked a little bit. And considering that you got to hold on, your forearms are tight as can be, causing a little bit of issues. So what I would do is look at either a neutral grip, if you can find one of those, or if you can have like gymnastics rings or something that can have a little bit of twist to it. Twisting is very, very natural for the body to do. Most of our muscles do not run in linear fashion. They kind of do this, Twizzler candy cane kind of twisting thing. So we're meant to have some of this to some degree. It's very, very healthy. So I'm betting you're running against the limits of that rotation a little bit, and maybe find something that's a little more either neutral or can rotate even a little bit. If you can rotate that much, it'd probably take the stress right off. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. Let me get to a couple more. If you could choose one and never do the other again, would you choose chin-up or pull-up? Again, I only do pull-ups because everything is pull-ups. I never use the word chin-up anymore because it's just a stupid term. I would say pull-ups, overhand grip, pull-ups, underhand grip, pull-ups, alternated grip, pull-ups, neutral grip, pull-ups with rotation. I always just, you're pulling, you're going up. It's a pull-up. Hey, Matt, asking once more since I was missed before. Thank you again. I don't intentionally miss people. It's just I can't see it all in one shot. But was wondering, do you think progressing doing only one set is feasible? Oh, absolutely. It's certainly possible. It's harder for sure. But definitely. Yeah, you could progress with one rep. What was better than the last rep you did? That's what progression is about, is what was better than the last time. So the only thing you need for progression is to haven't done it before and then to do it better the next time you do it to any degree. One rep, one set, one workout, what was better than last time. And if you've got that, you got progression. Congratulations. But it's easier to do that when you've got multiple chances to just make it happen. All right, one more question here. Who wants it? Who wants it? Let's see. Once again, from Sussy. Hey, Matt, what type of exercise would you recommend for BJJ then? I'm trying to gain strength all over my legs and my upper body. So general fundamental stuff. So your best BJJ exercise is BJJ. That's 85% of it, 90% of it right there. Big mistake a lot of martial artists make. I don't know why it is more in the martial arts world versus other athletics. But if you ask a basketball player, what's your training like? And they're like, okay, I do free throws, and I do passing drills, I do dribbling drills, basketball. And then at the very end of the day, I'll spend 20 minutes in the weight room, just a little supplemental thing. But when it comes to martial arts, they'll be like, I'll be in the gym, I do speed work, I do all this stuff, and then maybe I'll do like 1 or 2 classes a week kind of thing. Always make your martial arts training the bread and butter of your workouts, because that really is what's responsible. Like, you could be the strongest guy in the gym and suck as a martial artist. Many people do. And you could be doing just martial arts and never do any strength and conditioning whatsoever and be completely dominant. Okay, so your strength training is just supplemental as a martial artist. It's really not going to make that much difference. Just had to get that out of the way to mention it. So that's why just the basic stuff, squats, push-ups, pull-ups, and practicing those things with overcoming isometrics just to get that feeling in the nervous system of just going all out with the muscle against an immovable force. And that's about it. That's all I would say. And then you have everything else from your martial arts. I don't think you really need that much that's that different. In my book, Bodyweight Training for Martial Arts, there's really nothing unusual there. It's push, pull, squat, flexion, extension, lateral, and stuff. But we train it in different speeds, isometric, explosiveness, to make sure that, because as a martial artist, you got to be able to go a million different directions. You got to be fast and you got to hold and have a lot of tension there. So that's why I wrote the book, is because too many martial artists are doing bodybuilding, where it's just smooth, slow, grinding stuff, which isn't bad. But without the two ends of the speed spectrum, you're missing out on a lot of that potential. So that's why I wrote the book, is to say, guys, we need to train like this, not like here in the middle as well. But take regular stuff and make sure you're doing some stuff explosively. It doesn't take much, like literally 2 sets will take care of you. It's not something where you got to spend hours doing stuff. Like most martial artists, I tell you, yeah, you should be able to do most of your strength and conditioning warming up for class. A couple minutes after class, everybody went and got a drink and there's 5 minutes. Okay, you do 10 explosive push-ups. Good, done. Push chain explosive work, done. It does not take a whole lot. Nowadays, high-level athlete training is a key factor. I would argue not as much as you think. Not as much as you think. I've got a couple friends who were in the NHL, and they were like, yeah, I mean, we do it, but you're talking about going from 99% to 100%. It's not going to take you from 30 to 80%. It's just putting the last little bit on top, the cherry on top kind of thing. It is very important because when you're at that level, the difference between 99% and 100% is huge. But for amateurs like us, 1% is really not going to do much for you. Like see the thing in the background there? That's my new mountain bike. I just bought that today, right? That's a mountain bike way above my pay grade. Now, do I really think that's going to make me a much better rider? Hell no. That thing's got more technology than the space shuttle. But why do I think I'm not going to be that great of a mountain bike? Because I'm not riding enough. It's that simple. I haven't put in the miles. I'm not that good. And I can make my legs a lot stronger and I can get a much better bike. But is it really going to help? Not really. Not really. Is riding a couple more times a week going to help? Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. The actual training of the sport is where you're going to get most of it, and doing that better as well. Not just hard working with it as well as getting dialed in on your training, becoming a better mountain biker and better hockey player. That's where the real results rest and reside. All right, folks, I am off. I'm going to go get me some sushi with a buddy of mine, but thank you so much for coming on. We'll do this again next week. Next week, we're going to wrap up because last week we had our push chain, push-ups, pull-ups. Next week is squats. We're talking about lower body, things to improve, programming, and tips and tricks to bring your lower body training to the next level and beyond. So watch the Red Delta Project Instagram channel for the announcement for when and where that's going to be. I'll promise to give you a little more heads up today. Unfortunately, I would give you 15 minutes heads up. But thanks so much for staying on. Again, links to my new shirt, Paul Wade's Calisthenics, and all the books that sponsor these episodes, like Bodyweight Training for Martial Arts, Overcoming Isometrics, Grind Style Calisthenics, and more, down below in the description as well. Thank you so much for everybody's support and for coming on and asking such great questions. I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.